Okay, cool. Now we welcome to State of Play on Mint Press News. I am your host, Greg Stoker. We have more of a military-oriented episode. We're going to be talking to a former U.S. Special Forces operator, a Green Beret who was in Iraq, and I'm going to also be speaking from my experience as a ranger in Afghanistan about the conduct of the Israeli occupation force. This is going to be kind of a really long interview. I don't think we're going to have enough time for Q&A. Real quick, I see some comments. Greg, we got a march in New York City again. LOL, my legs have fully recovered. Yeah, I'm going to be there in November sometime. But yeah, we can talk about that in a later one. So sorry guys, we're kind of strapped for time, but this is a really good one. So according to mainstream political discourse, the ongoing genocide in Palestine, now dragging into its second year with no end in sight, is technically a war. A lack of political will to force Netanyahu's government to the table, as well as the resiliency of the resistance, ensures that the violence shall continue. If the Israeli government was interested in saving face and long-term self-preservation, they would have declared victory after Yahya Sinwar was killed in action. A simple PR victory, while ultimately hollow, would have allowed them to appease many of their supporters with the fact that the supposed architects of October 7th were killed and that the Hamas power structure was supposedly dismantled. I mean, they would literally never have a better opportunity to save face, end the violence. They currently have soldiers refusing orders, refusing to go back into Gaza, refusing to go fight in Southern Lebanon. So they're having a massive morale issue. There's also heavy suicide rates that are underreported at the time. So that's going to come out later. And according to the IDF's own intelligence veterans, they will not be able to defeat Hamas and, by extension, the other resistance groups in Gaza. In fact, there's only one way to defeat the resistance, and that is to kill, displace, and starve every Palestinian in Gaza and turn the land into an apocalyptic skeletal wasteland. We see that the IDF is attempting just that in the north with their declaration of a military zone. And since October 1st, the Israeli military has ordered nearly 500,000 people in northern Gaza to leave their homes, blocked aid from reaching them, forced displacement, and the use of starvation as a weapon of war. It's clear that they will bulldoze headlong over international law and the law of land warfare in order to achieve their stated goal to eventually cleanse and reoccupy the Gaza Strip, either in part or in whole. It's also clear that the current Biden administration and, by extension, presidential hopeful Vice President Harris will not put any checks or conditions on Israel to conform to international law and end the violence. And now The Economist has just put out an article saying that Trump is now leading in the U.S. election forecasts. I hate The Economist. They're an imperialist rag that gets everything wrong when it comes to China, Russia, and Iran. But they're usually pretty good about U.S. elections. So, she didn't have to be a pro-genocide candidate. I mean, she could have been a pro-war candidate. She just had to, not do a genocide. It's such a low bar that even Ronald Reagan can clear it, but she couldn't clear it. So again, we're thinking she's about to pull a 2016 Hillary and just lose a really easy election to Trump. So tonight on State of Play, as I said before, we will discuss how these ongoing Israeli military operations in Gaza, the West Bank, and Southern Lebanon do not constitute the waging of war with former Special Forces Green Beret Alan Shebaro, who's recently returned from occupied West Bank. It's clear that the tactics employed by the IDF are not meant to defeat the resistance forces, since the resistance will never cease to exist. This war has been, from the start, an opportunity to seize land, displace people, destroy infrastructure, all under the political cover of the United States and its Western allies. Client states. NATO. The failure to implement the moral consistency when it comes to foreign policy and the blithe disregard for the rules-based order will have long-term ramifications for the United States and Israel, starting with, we might have to be confronted with another 4 years of the orange blob, who I would rather never hear again. But, 2025 is going to be a wild year. So the world is a less safe place after a year of unmitigated violence. All of those who apologize for the genocide and use the conduct of U.S. coalition forces during the global war on terror to justify the actions of the IDF now are being intellectually dishonest. This is not a war. So join us tonight between two U.S. Special Operations veterans about the conduct of Israeli forces, their failure to achieve tactical and operational objectives, and what this heedless violence means for the conduct of modern warfare going forward. Now, here at Mint Press News, we don't have any corporate funding, don't get ad revenue. We're demonetized on like every platform. So if you want to support what we're doing here, there is a Patreon for Mint Press News. $5 a month goes a long way to ensuring independent watchdog journalism. And yeah, you know, if you're getting nickeled and dimed and you find this stage of late stage finance capitalism unbearable and you don't have $5 a month, we're just glad you're here. Like, share, subscribe, drop a comment. It helps the algorithm push this into new viewers and spread the word. So consider that. Thanks, guys. And you know what? Again, this is a long interview. So sorry, we're not going to have a ton of time for a live Q&A. I'll probably add 5 minutes to the end of the episode to wrap things up, but we're just going to jump right in. All right, here we go. All right, y'all. So tonight on State of Play, I'll probably be reposting this to my own personal platform. We are talking to Alan Shebaro, former Special Forces veteran of 15 years. And just in case you guys aren't familiar with U.S. military parlance, Special Forces is what's commonly known as Green Berets. So he kind of went accidentally viral speaking out at a city council meeting about Palestine in McKinney, Texas. And just about like every news agency picked it up. Unexpected. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, man, for making the time. I know you're traveling around for coming on to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you guys may be familiar with this clip from about like 6 months ago where, you know, Alan was speaking out about, you know, being a veteran and recognizing that this wasn't essentially a war. It was unrecognizable as a war because arguably, and we've talked about this many times, it's not. There are no defined military objectives. It just seems like a massive genocidal land grab. And I know we saw these images from last weekend, the kind of are reminiscent of like the darkest days of Vietnam with a man being burnt alive in hospital tents with the IV still attached to his arm. And we've talked about this a number of times. Like what we're seeing now is kind of just like the tip of the iceberg. So when this gets over and like UN task force goes in to figure out what's actually going on, it's going to be way darker and more grim that we've seen. But anyways, just to reintroduce y'all to Alan, let me just pull this up real quick. Oh my God. Don't have my producer here today. So
my name is Alan Shebaro. I was with 3rd Special Forces Group. I was with the Commanders in Extremis Force with B-23. I was a sniper, assaulter, and a breacher. I did 3 rotations, 2008, 2009, and 2007. I know war. What's going on in Palestine right now is not a war. It is the dehumanization, it's the genocide, it's the ethnic cleansing of a specific people to take their land. This is wrong, and there's nothing more American than speaking out against what's wrong. The U.S. taxpayer is paying for this, which makes it even more frustrating. This needs to stop. This needs to stop. Whatever you can do, anything, this needs to stop.
So I guess my question, first of all, is like, what compelled you to show up at a city council meeting and say that?
And that actually, that night that I showed up there was the same evening where it was I believe the 3rd veto for a ceasefire, and I was just beyond myself.
just absolutely frustrated. I just kept seeing the same rhetoric, the same things repeated over and over again that I've been seeing in the past. And man, I'll be honest with you, the whole thing, that it was kind of an eye opener for me on October 7th, because it was like breaking out of a cult. And it was, I'm one of those people that came out late, man. As ashamed as for me it is to say that, I didn't see the full on amount of just, I believe the bullshit that was coming out. And for me, it was just finally, when I kept hearing those words unprovoked, it was what triggered me to kind of like, wait a minute, that isn't the case at all, you know. And so when I kept hearing that, that's when I started digging into it. And then all of a sudden it started, and just one thing after another just kept hitting me so freaking hard about everything that was going on. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And even since then, it's just gotten dramatically worse. But that was kind of like the eye opener for me. And, you know, when I went there, it was there. I didn't have anyone, didn't know anyone that was there. I was just one by myself.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So just for the audience, like, you actually just recently went to West Bank to see it for yourself.
Yeah. So it was actually 2 months after I did that city council speech. I ended up going to the West Bank from May to July to see everything for myself firsthand. Mm-hmm. And damn, that was an eye opener as well. I knew it was bad. I just didn't realize like how bad. And that was in the West Bank. That wasn't even in Gaza. You know, yeah. So it was just, it's unfathomable. I don't think people have an understanding of this unless you actually go there for yourself. But it's, I think what's really boggling about this is that even people, you know, that are coming back and saying, this is what's happening, you know, and people are just kind of like still at deaf ears, like talking to a wall.
Yeah. So personally for me, I'd been like wise to what was going on in Israel and Palestine for a minute, but again, I didn't know it was this bad. So when October 7th happened and I heard about like 40 beheaded babies, I was like, okay, well, you know, engaged like ISIS-K back in the day, they didn't even do that. Where does one get 40 babies to behead? And I was like, okay, it's just typical atrocity propaganda. And I knew the response to October 7th was going to be bad. I had no idea it was going to be this bad. And I think when I started speaking out, it was just because we were watching, my buddy and I, who's a former field grade artillery major, who's a fire control officer in Baghdad. We're watching this live feed on October 10th, and they're dropping like 500-pound GBUs like in downtown Gaza. And we just like call each other up. I was like, dude, are you seeing this? It's like, am I crazy? Are they dropping those? And that's kind of how it started for me when I started to kind of like speak out about this. So I guess when it comes like as a veteran, I guess we kind of had certain experiences, and we're looking at the IDF right now, who's our greatest ally, who we've been told is this like very elite force, and what we're seeing on the ground is totally not reflective of that. So when you were in West Bank, did you interact with any of these IDF soldiers that were running the checkpoints or anything like that?
I got a gun drawn on me 9 times in 2 months. 9 times.
Really?
I actually have one picture up on my profile that one of the other photographers took for just, I'm literally just standing there, and he's got his weapon drawn at me. And I would just, what's not in the picture is that I actually got up and started walking around, just because I was like, maybe he just has no muzzle control whatsoever, has no idea what he's doing. And yeah. I got up and walked around, and he got up and followed me. So I went back and forth a couple of times, and he stayed on me with the finger on the trigger. And this was during the every week they have the settler marches, and they go around in downtown Hebron, in Al Khalil, and they're armed settlers protected by the IDF and the Israeli police. And they go around and, do their hateful chants and saying, this will soon be ours. And just a whole bunch of just spewing all the hatred that you could possibly imagine. And this was me just waiting for them to come out. I got guns drawn on me at the checkpoint. As I was, as we got stopped, there was Palestinians in the car. So not only they draw on them, they draw on me too. And this is something, and this is the worst part, is I got a sliver of what they go through on a daily basis. No one can go where, absolutely nobody can go there and spend not even a week there and will not be changed for the rest of their lives and still come out the same person and have the same views. If you were pro-Israeli for what they were doing and you spend a week in the occupied West Bank, it'll change you. There's no way. Unless you go in there with the IDF, unless you go in there, with, like an Israeli tour guide, for them to, and I've seen that happen as well. Well, they're just, given their own, Hasbara rhetoric that they normally do and give you like a guided censored tour. If you go there, I just went there as a tourist. I have no connections, nothing, just to see what it's like for myself. And that's when later on I linked up with some of the Routers Media chief photographer that was out there, a couple of the human rights organizations, and got even more from them.
Yeah. I mean, an American citizen was just shot in the head last month for, attending a peaceful protest. And I mean, you said you were a former sniper. How does that happen? Yeah.
What was that? This is what blew my mind. What is it? Biden said that it was a ricochet off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to be in the military to believe that. I mean, a direct shot from the head. That means she had her head canted down to the side to try to catch a round. That's off the. I mean, that makes zero sense. The possibilities of that happening, the probability is zero. The possibility is like 1 in maybe a centillion.
Yeah. For
a headshot like that to happen, and then especially like all the then when people come back and you have the witnesses, the doctors, because when I came back to the States and I started linking up with different people, one of the organizations I linked up with was Doctors Against Genocide.
Yeah.
And went to DC, started trying to talk to some of the people there, trying to get just into the ear of some of the politicians. And everyone that we talked to, and I just spent time in the West Bank. I wasn't even in Gaza, but you had doctors that were literally in Gaza, and they spent weeks there. And the things that they were saying, it was like talking to a brick wall. It was insane. And we were saying that these kids, there's like multiple kids that are getting shot directly into the head. I mean, how many, if you had that one time that someone got shot in the head, okay, one time. But if you have kids that are coming in there and these surgeons that are working on them, and these repeated instances that you have direct shots to the head, and you're saying this was an accident, oops, how dense do you need to be?
Yeah. I mean, good enough of a sniper to hit kids in the head, but, not good enough to differentiate between combatants and non-combatants, apparently. It makes no sense.
It doesn't. I've never, and the thing is that for some reason, I don't know how it is, but it literally, to me, it seems like a cult leader telling his cult, this is what happened, and then just kind of like, okay, 2 + 2 = 5.
I mean, so when it comes to the case for genocide, I guess like what we look for, because every conflict is different. We look for intent and is it institutionalized? So we're seeing this unprecedented like rogue targeting for kinetic strikes, and we see the ground forces sniping kids. Also, there was this event earlier this year where I guess 3 of the hostages got free, and they're waving white flags, shooting and shouting in Hebrew, and running towards the Israeli Defense Force that was on the ground, and they just got shot. And from my perspective, it's like, you're only going to do that if you're indiscriminately shooting unarmed civilians.
100%. And what was the second one? I got different reports on that, but let's say the lowest number that I got was 230 at that last hostage rescue.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, and I don't know what alternate universe they said, but one of the headlines in on the Times of Israel was saying it was a tremendous success. I don't see how is it even possible that if if one civilian dies, it's a catastrophic failure. For 200 and again, this is a lower number because I've heard all the way up to 274, but 200 plus, let's just say, and you consider that a success? I mean, people caught in a crossfire, 200 of them. To me, I'm still struggling to try to understand like how people, especially other people in the veteran community, that are still eating this bullshit. I don't get it.
I think that's kind of mind-boggling to me, because what you're referring to for the audience was the Nusayrat hostage rescue. I mean, it was more of a massacre than
it was
anything, and it's just kind of like how do you kill like 230 people in a hostage rescue operation? There's some word on the street that they may have lost 3 hostages, so there were like 7 hostages. I mean, we'll never know, but seems likely, especially when you're just indiscriminately slinging rounds, or can't be sure what happened, but it seems like they just started like dropping a bunch of ordnance on exfil, or like during the hostage rescue procedure. And I was trying to tell people, like, okay, this is like a PR victory, because it's like they go from PR victory to PR victory. I was like, okay, this is great. I guess you're never going to get another hostage again because of like what it means. Like, they were living above ground within like civilian residencies, and now they're going to go back in the tunnels, and you're never going to get another hostage again. Also, when it comes to hostage rescue operations, that's like a last ditch effort, because like that when everything else fails, because the complexities and the danger of hostage rescue operations. But that's something they will never talk about. It's like there's no way to recover that many people through military action. It has to be through diplomacy. Like that's just the bottom line. But it's kind of mind-boggling to me that all these veterans, especially from like the JSOC community, who like should know this, just don't. There's like some thought termination that happens when it comes to like Israel. I'm not sure. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
So the unit I was actually with was actually the Commanders in Extremis Force. So it's direct action, hostage rescue, counterinsurgency, and counterterrorism. Mm-hmm. And even as we trained, the standards that we kept, if you had one flyer with one shot that was on the paper and not on the target itself, you got removed off your team. Mm-hmm. And the second one, and you had to go from your A team to the B team. And if you get a second chance and that happens again on the B team, you're removed out of the company. Mm-hmm. So everything that you worked hard to get to, you're gone. That's it. And it is that precise. It's that surgical. It is the most complicated and complex operation that you can possibly do. And to start dropping JDAMs in the middle of it, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And to me, and then you have people like John Spencer, right? He's given his whole wording on it, and he's like, oh yeah, this is the most moral army, and
John Spencer blocked me on X, and just so everybody knows, John Spencer is apparently. Well, I mean, he's a former U.S. infantry officer who now kind of is essentially like a guest lecturer at West Point, essentially. And he's taken paid trips to Israel. He's gone into the tunnel network with the IDF, and he's basically just a talking mouthpiece for the Israeli armed forces. But yeah, sorry, that's who John Spencer is. Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, so, and the thing is that if you had a conversation, and I actually did have a conversation with one of the IDF, their version of SF, and he was talking about the ratios. He was talking about, and I said, well, how did you get these numbers? I just straight out, how did you get these numbers? Did these numbers come from where? Because do you have people on the ground? You're taking satellite imaging. So if you take satellite imaging, okay, how are you going to distinguish between a militant and a civilian then? And how are you going to say, well, we only killed the militants? How? Because the kill radius for a JDAM is what, 165 feet?
Depending on the GBU, yeah.
Depending on it, but I'm trying to stay conservative.
Okay.
So 165 feet, just kill, not shrapnel, just kill zone. In that 165 feet, with the most densely populated area on the planet, and you're trying to say that you have an accurate count, you can distinguish between that, and nobody can answer this question. And so when you have these numbers that are coming out, and they're saying that, like, no, this is not it, this is not it. They're being held to a standard. The Gaza Health Ministry is being held to a standard that nobody else in any other conflict is being brought to. So they don't have anything even remotely close to that. But yet somehow they're able to distinguish this. They're able to have this some type of analysis to where they could distinguish between civilians and militants. I don't get that. I don't understand. This entire everything that's been going on. And I do call this a genocide. I call this ethnic cleansing. I'm not backing down on my words. As a matter of fact, I'm doubling down on it, especially since February. Mm-hmm. I don't see how anyone can, with any type of, especially with some type of military, whether it be infantry, just common sense, can still think that it's not. I don't. It's not a genocide. I don't get this. And I mean, there's colossal failure after another colossal failure. And just because they're slapping a label on it saying success, people are eating it up. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to like baked in like cultural Islamophobia from the post 9/11 like wars, and yeah, I mean I work a lot with like Veterans for Peace and About Face. I'm not associated, but like or I'm not a member, but I do work with them closely. And so like a lot of vets are on the level. I talked to some of my buddies from Ranger Regiment who have been out for a while, and they're just like also on the level about this, but it seems like so many vets are not. And I'm just like, wait, first of all, the reason that I started like kind of wondering like what Israel was and why, and started to unravel all the propaganda surrounding it and the IDF was because like, for the most part, even when I was back in like 2013, I started to kind of realize that, they're kind of an incompetent, undisciplined military force for like the most part. And so you said you were talking to their equivalent special forces. I just get the sense, and I've never actually directly worked with, Israeli special operations or encountered anyone from that community, but it seems like for the most part, they like kind of refuse to do special operations in some ways. Well, I don't know what they're doing, what that community is actually doing, because it seems like they just push a button, drop a bomb, stay buttoned up in their tanks, and like never get out.
And that's the thing, is that you have the majority of them are reservists.
Yeah.
They have, I mean, if I'm not, I don't know, this is from what I've been told, from what I've read, it's a 2-year service, and their actual active duty is very minimal. Their entire active duty force. And what other experiences do they have? I mean, did you see any of them in Iraq? Did you see, in Afghanistan? Because I never seen them in Iraq.
They were not in Afghanistan. As far
they
as
never go anywhere else. They're literally right there. That's all they have. That's all the experience that they know. And they've been fighting, unconventional warfare the entire time, and it seems like they haven't learned anything from it. And the entire mentality of we're going to destroy Hamas, you're never going to destroy Hamas. We have learned our lesson. I mean, just look back at Vietnam, look back at Iraq. Well, all we did was make the situation 10 times worse, and we're dealing with it still. And I'm speaking just about Iraq. And you can't get rid of an ideology. You cannot kill an ideology. And and all they're doing is higher recruitment, and it's just going to get worse. It's going to get substantially worse.
Well, you know, they've created a whole new acronym, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. So I'm sure, you know, people are just going to do this. When I talk to vets about this, I'm just like, I was a white dude, like upper middle class, growing up in Texas. Nobody was trying to take anything from me. And one of the reasons I went into Ranger Bat was because, like, I knew I was going to get sent and to do combat operations. Like, if I passed selection, that's exactly where I was going to go. I signed up for that. Nobody was taking anything away from me. So, like, based on my personality, if I was like to grow up in Gaza, you know, I'm sure I just would have been like, okay, I'm going to be a baker. There's a 40% unemployment rate. They do mowing the grass operations. One of my cousins was shot in 2018 on the Great March of Return, just being a kid, by, you know, snipers, because they shot over like what 200 kids when that peaceful protest happened. Yeah, I'm sure I just would have, you know, not done what I did in America. So it's kind of like this double standard that only is allowed to exist because of Islamophobia, racism. I don't know, like, why people from our community can't like put two and two together. It's kind of depressing sometimes.
To me, the most shocking one is when you talk to any of these the 2A fanatics, right? Mm-hmm. These are 100% of these people that claim to be, if they're actually true diehard 2A, they would be resistance. They would be Hamas. They mm-hmm. would be. I guarantee it, because the entire thing is, you're not going to take my home. You're not going to, you're not going to harm my family or my friends. One of the most, I remember watching Tim Kennedy on Joe Rogan, and he was saying, you have no idea what kind of things I can do. And I'm paraphrasing. But if you ever try to, hurt my family or my loved ones, I will rip your face off and wear it as a mask. And how does that standard change if you're brown skinned speaking Arabic? Why would it change at all? Like, if you were going to harm my family or my friends or my loved ones, why aren't you expecting someone else to react the exact same way? And this is the thing about me that I started kind of looking back on what I was doing. Even when I was in Iraq, I realized that then, like, I am not going to get shot. The guys to my left and right are not going to get shot. I'm going to make sure that I do my job and do my job well. But at the same time, I knew I didn't blame them for doing what they were doing, because I knew if someone came into Texas and tried to do the same thing, I would be doing the same thing. So I didn't agree. I certainly wasn't going to get shot and killed, but I did understand. And this is the whole thing that it just, to me, is just, I don't understand especially the American community, especially the American military community and veterans, that do not understand that they're simply doing the exact same thing that any one of them would be doing as well. Defending their home, defending their loved ones. And to what extent would you be willing to go? I can't verify this, but I've heard this from several different sources that 70% of Hamas are orphans. The most dangerous person, the most dangerous people in the world are the ones that have nothing to lose. And you think about a fighting force that is 70% orphans, that is probably the most frightening type of force that you'd ever want to fight. They literally have nothing to lose. Those are the people that are frightening.
Yeah, and not only do they not have anything to lose, they're not going to rotate back to the continental U.S. and then serve out their contract and get out. They have nowhere else to go or nothing else to do.
That's all they got.
Yeah. So I think they're kind of stymied in Gaza. Apparently, there's an Operation Summer Camps going on in West Bank. I think it's just like a demolition operation. I'm not like it seems like the bulldozers there, in like Jenin, destroying infrastructure are the main effort of that. I just like, do you were just there? Do you see any definable like operational objectives that can be achieved? Like what are they actually trying to do there?
Oh, it's the same. It's the exact same thing they've been doing. It's just now they're using Gaza as an excuse, and it's the illegal settlements that they're trying to actually take advantage of what's going on in Gaza, and using that as a distraction to actually increase the amount of settlements that they have. I mean, the crazy part about all this is that they literally announced it, said that they're going to actually have 5 more settlements. And I was watching, what was his name? Not Blinken, but the guy that's doing the for the journalists,
Matt Miller,
Matt Miller, yes, the spokesman. He keeps saying it's just inconsistent with U.S. policies. It's inconsistent with this international law. Just call it what it is. It's illegal, and this is exactly what they're doing. They're demolishing everything. And if you look at it from an ethnic cleansing standpoint, it totally makes sense. All of this makes sense. What they're doing in Gaza, what they're doing in the West Bank, and what they're attempting to do in Lebanon as well. All of this makes sense if you look at it simply from an ethnic cleansing standpoint. Make life as miserable as possible so you don't have to do the work. So you have them leaving, and this is exactly what I saw when I was in Hebron. And they will consistently harass, they will consistently humiliate, they will consistently, and there was, I think, 21 or 22 people that were killed by IOF while I was there, in the outskirts of where I was at and in Jenin. I mean, 21 or 22 people that were killed. And this year, from the 1st of January 2023 to the 1st October 2023, was the highest amount of Palestinians that were killed by Israeli occupation forces in the last 20-something years. So this was, and people keep separating West Bank from Gaza. It's the same thing. It's not separate. It's not a separate thing. And so when you have, the people that are actually being killed in the West Bank, it's for the exact same purpose. It's still ethnic cleansing. It's still them trying to develop these settlements out in the West Bank, and they're encroaching little by little. And they've been doing this for 76 years. Some faster than others, some slower than other times, but they're still doing the exact same thing. It's the exact same plays out of the exact same playbook.
Yeah. I mean, that's something Israel's always struggled with. They want to be the Middle East's only democracy, but they have this huge apartheid problem. So it seems like they're using the cover of October 7th to delete Gaza, and using the cover of deleting Gaza to drive people out of West Bank. I mean, they're literally never going to get a better opportunity, because in the post-World War II era, can't just do genocide and continue to survive as a government, So it just seems like, from your perspective, where does this end? I mean, I know they've expanded the dimensions of this conflict into Southern Lebanon. They're establishing buffer zones, I guess. So a bunch of the residents, let's call them, of northern Israel can go back to their homes. That just seems like another nebulous forever war without like defined parameters for like what can be achieved. There's no timeline. What's your sense of what's going on there?
I mean, they even shot at the Irish UN peacekeepers. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are the people that are literally right there to try to keep that buffer zone, within international law. And there were and what did the one of the guys, I forgot his name, but said
former
that
Trump advisor.
Yeah. Just nuke them, just carpet bomb them all and get rid of them, shoot them all. And we're talking about a force that's literally brought in there to maintain peace within that area. Exactly what they were trying to say. Oh, we need to clear this out so we can instill people like that in that area to maintain the buffer zone. and the thing is that the exact same wording, almost verbatim, was given by Netanyahu at the when they started bombing Beirut, and saying, "Oh yeah, they're hiding in the homes. They're hiding, the weapons caches. They're hiding, Hezbollah fighters are in the apartments." And it's literally, and for people not to be able to see that, again, to me, is either, I think you're right, it's overridden by hate, it's overridden by racism, by Islamophobia. And the thing is that these people have been vilified for the longest time. And I think this is the one thing we've normalized, is hatred for Arabs in general. I mean, I was actually talking to somebody just this last week about, if you look at these, the movies that I grew up with that I thought were completely innocent, Back to the Future, I mean, of all of them. And then I remember the Twin Pines Mall parking lot where he actually gets to 88 miles an hour. Who was chasing him? They're Arabs. You know what I mean? And so we've vilified them at to the furthest extent. I mean, we've had, the Russians, the Arabs, and villains, maybe cartel guys.
Yeah. And
those were the main people that we've villainized. But we've done this with Arabs for the longest time. I mean, was it Taken, right? I mean, the whole thing was an operation done, that you go to the highest, and it was the Arabs, right? And every type of hijacking, for no reason, right? Because they just hate our way of life. And,
well, they're terrorists. They hate our freedom.
Yeah, that's our freedom. And that's to me the thing that I've had to recognize for myself was just how it through such the minuscule things that we see in Hollywood and TV shows and so forth. It's just we've consistently, if you hear terrorist, it's immediately symbiotic with an Arab. And we've done this for generations. We've done this for decades. And the thing is that if you actually look back to when I started kind of digging into this, I started recognizing, okay, when was the actually very first terrorist attack? It was done by Israel, or excuse me, by Jewish Zionists. I'm correct myself, because it was 1946. But they actually dressed up as Arabs to bomb the King David Hotel, right? Yeah. And so then you
baked in to their operational SOPs since very early on.
And then was it 5 years later, the Lebanon affair, and they were still doing the same things. The only thing is that that bomb detonated too soon, and they were caught on that. And so, but even though we have all these instances where they're deliberately attacking, terrorizing, killing, murdering, it's all brushed away. It's just shoot away for some reason and say, well, it was an Arab. Okay, everyone accepts it. And that's, to me, I think it's been ingrained for so long. I think that's one of the hardest things that people's going to have to do, is because is to try to get out of that mindset that Arabs are bad people from birth. And the crazy part is that when I was in the West Bank, I have never met they were literally the nicest people, the most beautiful people that I ever met in my life. I've never heard the word welcome more in the 2 months that I was there than in my entire life combined. And I think that made the entire situation worse. It was just so much worse leaving there and seeing how they were being treated, and how, honestly, the most welcoming and gracious host to complete stranger. And I didn't blend in for shit. I mean, I did not look like anybody out there. But they welcomed me just randomly. Just people invited me to dinner. When I was renting out an apartment, I had a home cooked meal. I was invited to their dinner at least once a week. people invited me for coffee straight off the street. I had to add time to anywhere I was going because they invited me in. They were saying, no, come, fun, sit, have coffee with me. They're very insistent on it too. And I didn't even drink coffee, but I drank more coffee in the last 2 months that I was there than I did in my entire adult life. And the thing is that if anyone goes there, that entire stigma is just eliminated if you just go and spend time there. But I understand people aren't going to do that. But the people that are actually coming from there saying, this is not real, this is not true, they're not. People were worried about me getting kidnapped, like, oh, be careful out there, you're going to get, I was like, kidnapped by who? Who are you talking about? Oh, the Palestinians, they're going to, Hamas is going to be out there and they're going to kidnap me. I'm like, I'm not worried about them. If I disappear, trust me, man, it ain't going to be from them.
Yeah, it's going to be military detention,
Yeah.
So we're seeing all the same like anti-Arab hate in our own government with our own politicians. And like, do you feel like it's at an unprecedented pitch, like the rhetoric, the Islamophobia? Because like, I knew it must have been bad, like leading up to the Iraq War in 2003, but I was like 13 at the time. I don't remember it being this bad.
I gotta say, it was.
Yeah.
I honestly think it was. It definitely was.
Okay.
I don't think it's changed at all. The thing is that I don't know if you remember, but during 9/11, I mean, shortly after, I think this was like like 2 weeks after 9/11 or 3 weeks after 9/11. No. I was actually like, I'm sorry, I take that back. It was like 4 or 5 months after. There was a guy that went into a convenience store and shot him because he was wearing a turban.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he wasn't even Muslim. He was a Sikh.
Yeah.
Their hate was so blind. He didn't even know who the right person was to hate. It was just so blind because he was like, oh, he's different, therefore I'm going to shoot him. Their entire history of Sikh, actually, they don't get along at all with Muslims. But this guy was blinded so much by that it overcame him, and he shot. I mean, and I say the wrong person. He shot a person wrongfully. Period. Mm-hmm. But the whole reason why he did it is because he was, in his mind, doing the right thing by killing a Muslim. And the guy wasn't even Muslim. I think but these are the instances, and then you have. That was bad, but was it last November or December where the landlord stabbed that 6-year-old child, like, mm-hmm. Was it 28 times? I mean, so it makes me think that was it worse then? I think the problem is right now is that I think it was worse then. We just didn't see it. The problem is now is that we do see it and we're ignoring it, because now you have other sources of media. You have other sources of getting information where it's not just through, Fox and CNN and MSNBC. You actually have a different source that, through social media, and you're watching this go on. But the problem is that you have these people that are literally continually saying, oh, this is propaganda, this is bullshit, this is they're using dolls.
Oh,
where
yeah,
are they going to get the dolls from? Yeah.
Hollywood, Gaza wood. It's all, filmed.
When do they have time to do this? What studio are they using? I mean, yet you have. I was watching this today on a YouTube channel called the Apostate Prophet, and he said, "Oh, look, they made a video game out of October 7th. Go to this site. Go to Hamas-massacre.net." And I was like, .net? Hold on a second. So all I did was try to find out who the domain host was, and it was Wix. So you're literally telling me that Hamas is going to be allowed to put up a website of all the things that they did on October 7th, so they can glorify themselves off an Israeli domain site, and people still believe it. but yet Hamas was it PL? You know, they took that down almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, the Israeli domain host is going to allow that to stay up. It's just like Hamas.com. I'm like, for fuck's sake, dude, just use just a simple amount of logic and reason for this. It doesn't make no sense.
Yeah, well, again, the word terrorist has been, weaponized, and now it's kind of like a thought terminating cliche where you don't have to apply any humanity or critical thinking to the people that are given the label terrorist. And it's a blanket term that goes from the Salafi jihadists in the Islamic State all the way to Hamas, which is, in my opinion, just a simple anti-colonial resistance front. But they're all grouped the same, even though they have completely different ideologies and like ways of being. So it's kind of.
But here's the crazy part: if you go to Oklahoma and say, "Hey, did you hear about that terrorist act that happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago?" The first thing they're going to think of is like, there are Arabs out here. I'm like, no, I'm talking about Timothy McVeigh.
Domestic, yeah.
You know what I mean? But they won't associate that. You see what I mean? They'll automatically start, it'll trigger them to start thinking of some foreign Muslim or Arab that is committing some type of terrorist attack.
Yeah. And it seems like we haven't learned anything domestically or from a foreign policy standpoint over the 20 years of the GWOT, Global War on Terror. And now the drums are beating to bomb Iran, fight them in some nebulous way. I think we're in a different position. I don't think the consent that we had after 9/11 exists now for another forever war in West or Central Asia. But it seems like a lot of people are pushing for it. And like a lot of people from our like community, veteran community, are like, yeah, maybe we need to go to war with Iran. And it just seems like a different time. We have a massive recruiting crisis. I don't think another war that doesn't need to happen needs to happen. And now Israel's publicly stated about 2 hours ago, they released to the press that they are going to bomb Iranian military sites. So your general thoughts on that?
Why do you just get your perspective on it? Why do you think we have a recruiting problem?
Well, because I think we have a recruiting problem because the incentives to join the military are no longer as great as they were, when we were coming up. Like college degrees aren't getting you as far as you thought. The military pay standard and housing standard hasn't kept up with inflation. Also, people are disillusioned by 20 years of war that achieved what? There's this joke going around that, it took trillions of dollars, 3 presidents, and countless lives to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. I think people are kind of sick of it. So
I think the latter for me is definitely one of the strong ones. But before I became very outspoken on what's going on in the Middle East, I still am a big advocate for, mental health.
Oh, okay. That's a great, yeah, gotcha.
And I honestly, I cannot, even if you talk to somebody that is in their teens or 20s, that literally had nobody in their family in the military, they still know somebody that has committed suicide or someone that was affected by suicide that was a veteran. And I think that's also one of the hard driving things, because as well as I do that when a veteran commits suicide, it doesn't affect just the individual itself. It affects pretty much the community. It affects the person. It affects their family. It affects their friends. And that just increases drastically when we had 5,700, or let's just say 6,000, maybe 7,000 total that were killed in Afghanistan,
wars.
Iraq combat, both of them.
Mhm.
But yet we've had, what was one of the reports that I read was 150,000 have committed suicide since 9/11. And so if you take that and let's just say he had 10 people that knew him, I mean, that covers such a drastic portion of the population, and it affects them drastically, and especially the younger people going like, why? Yeah, that's one of the best things that I can really, I have so much, I was really, really worried about this new generation coming up, but the more that I actually start listening to them and the more that I hear them asking and questioning why are we doing this? What is the origin? Why did they just attack? And I was like, holy shit, this is huge. This is actually like something that I have so much more faith in the new generation that's coming up than my generation at all, because they're questioning why are these things happening. Oh, this is horrible. October 7th is horrible. That's horrible. But why? Why did they do it? And then they go find out like, oh shit. Oh damn. What were they expecting? I mean, how would they expecting this to turn up any differently if you're going to treat people like that? And this is why I think you have such a large amount of this younger generation that's coming up and speaking out against it. They have literally no connection to Muslims, to anyone in the Middle East, just the cause itself, because it's the human thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. Sorry, I mean, go on a tirade, but on Iran, from what I understood, that they were actually going to go through a lot of the energy and oil is what they were targeting next, because like you said, there is no chance they're going to actually touch anything nuclear. It's too fortified. But I think if they really if they go after the oil, then it's going to really start pissing off the wrong people, and that's going to be China. Russia is one thing, but when you start rattling the hornet's nest in China, that's going to be another issue, because that could be, not just if they get involved militarily, but even worse, if they actually, if they have some type of economic backlash toward the U.S. and that's going to affect people. If they think the inflation is bad, wait till China gets involved and it starts. If they start imposing embargoes and that would be a economic catastrophe on an entirely new level. So I think they might be. What was the last one they did? They did like some surgical attacks on there, but if they start doing any type of carpet bombing on that, if they start doing just indiscriminate bombing or with their so-called show of force, I think that's going to actually be more likely than what they're doing, rather than trying to hit military targets. But again, I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, or you look from the other perspective, is that they're trying to draw in the U.S. to actually do more, and we have bases surrounding all around Iran. So there's a multitude of different paths that could be taken. I mean, none of them are even better than the other. But I mean, trying to draw in the U.S. into a regional war, I mean, that's been, since they started going into like Syria and then started going into Lebanon and then Iran. I mean, how more obvious can you get trying to draw us into that? I mean, we're sending 100 troops right now for the
the THAAD, the $1 billion THAAD battery. It's going there for air defense purposes, but of course, U.S. troops are now on the ground in a high vis capacity, and if they get hit, I don't think Iran would, because Iran obviously knows where the THAAD battery is going to be deployed. I don't think they'll shoot anywhere near it in a future conflict, because of course they don't want to actually directly target U.S. troops. But an accident could happen, and then you'd have like war hawks, like the Hillary Clintons and the Lindsey Grahams, being like, okay, we need to finally go to war with Iran, even though Iran has demonstrated throughout this conflict that they don't want that. In fact, they actually want a better relationship with the United States. They want a better nuclear deal. They want an ease on economic sanctions. And, I've talked to like former general officers in the U.S. Army about this. And like, even the command echelon in the United States military doesn't want a war with Iran. It just seems like we're downhill with no brakes and no guidance in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy for it. Again, the people that you're really going to piss off, if you really think that prices right now, especially gas prices, are bad right now, I mean, go ahead and strike any of the oil that's in Iran. I mean, that's going to be a whole other shitstorm.
Well, because Iran says if Israel does that or we do that, they're going to strike our own oil assets in the Gulf. And the reason they can shut down the Strait of Hormuz, there goes a significant portion of the shipping, the oil shipping. It just really, I don't know. But our foreign policy is kind of insane right now, and it doesn't seem like it will be any different under Trump than it is under the Biden administration. I mean, we'll see. But getting into a oil fight before an election doesn't seem like the play. So
I just think that it's not a laugh. It's a fucking joke. I'm sorry, man. But if you're going to he literally said 30 days now that he has to allow a humanitarian aid in. He's like, okay, here's my red line. So let's count 30 days. So that's what 1 week after the election.
Yeah.
Now he's his whole tough stance on that. I'm like, who's buying this?
A lot of people. A lot of people are buying this.
Oh my God. Oh, it's sad. It's sad.
Well, that's just the current state of affairs in U.S. foreign policy and domestic policy. Genocide and allowing a genocide is not a single issue vote. It feeds back into all the domestic issues that we are currently undergoing. Just trying to get people to wake up and see it. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for we're about out of time, y'all. Thank you so much for coming on. Alan Shebaro, former 3rd Special Forces Group.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it.
Yeah.